As the Biden administration attempts to build relationships with its European allies, Nord Stream 2 pipeline has become a point of stark division between the NATO allies. The $11 billion pipeline bringing Russian gas to Germany has raised major concerns over security and environmental issues, as voiced by Nordic and Eastern European allies. Is this a purely economic project, as Germany and Russia proclaim it to be? What is the US to make of this pipeline? Was lifting the sanction on the construction of the pipeline a mistake by the Biden administration? That's what Dr. Lena Sortsko-Harned will explore as we look at the politics of pipelines in Nord Stream 2. Hello and welcome to the Jefferson Educational Society's digital programming. I'm Ben Spigot. I'm the vice president at the JES, and I'm a contributing editor at the Erie Reader. Before we get to her presentation, a bit about the presenter. Dr. Lena Sortsko-Harned is an assistant teaching professor of political science at Penn State Barron. Her primary research interests are in the field of comparative politics. She is the author of a number of papers dealing with issues from nationalism and ethnic conflict, identity politics, electoral politics, comparative democratization, and political behavior in post-communist states of Eastern Europe. She co-authored a book, Post-Soviet Legacies and Conflicting Values in Europe, Generation Y, WHY with a capital Y there, capturing Generation Y, and it was published in December of 2017 and examines the intergenerational conflict and its consequences in post-Soviet Ukraine and Russia. For a fuller and much deserving bio, please head over to our website, jeserie.org. Folks, Dr. Sortsko-Harned will offer her insights and opening remarks, and then we're going to open the floor up for discussion. There we'll work our way through as many questions from you, the viewers, as we can as we host this event live. If you have a question, just leave it in the comments section below. If you're listening to or watching a later broadcast of this program, still send us your questions, your comments to keep this conversation going. And of course, for more information about upcoming Jefferson Educational Society programs and publications, visit that website, jeserie.org, and be sure to like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter and Instagram and subscribe to our YouTube channel. It's my pleasure to welcome back to the JES digital stage, Dr. Lena Sortsko-Harned. Thank you so much, Doctor, for joining us for this conversation. Very timely, of the moment. Can't wait to dig in. The geopolitics of pipelines, Nord Stream 2. Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. As always, we are on a winning streak of meeting every time when there is big events in the world going on. And this talk here, of course, is just a sandwich between two very important conversations that just happened on the world stage. And that is, of course, the meeting that went on Monday in Berlin. There was a meeting between Chancellor Merkel and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, which also addressed Nord Stream 2 as one of their concerns because, right, Ukrainian security and Ukraine features prominently in this conversation. And of course, tomorrow's visit of Chancellor Merkel in United States in her conversation with President Biden. So I thought that what we can do today is sort of look at Nord Stream a little bit more detailed, what it is, what the problem is, what the benefits of this particular project might be, what the proclaimed benefits are, and what are maybe some of the problems and possible solutions. So to catch everyone up, what is the Nord Stream 2, right? So it is a major pipeline and a project that is primarily done and run by Gazprom, which is of course Russia's state-owned company and world gas giant. Remember that, of course, Russia is the top exporter of gas around the world. Gazprom has been under the control of the Russian government for nearly 20 years now. It was sort of inception of that company dates back to Soviet days when it was created right before the collapse of USSR. Then it was briefly privatized in the early 90s after the collapse of USSR. And then when Vladimir Putin came to power in 2000s, slowly but surely nationalization of that project came to fruition. So what does it mean? That means that Russian government owns the lion's share of Gazprom, right? Making it a state company. So keep that in mind. That is an important tidbit. Also then, it is a sizable project. It is addition to the already existing Nord Stream pipeline that runs from Russia to Germany through the Baltic Sea. And this particular pipeline will basically double the capacity of the gas being pumped per year through that particular route. Altogether, it's about 1,230 kilometers in length. You can see it connects the Russia by Vyborg right around the border of Finland and runs all the way through into Germany. So the capacity of this pipeline is expected to be about 55 billion cubic meters of gas per year. It's a sizable chunk. It will definitely sort of increase the Russian flow of gas into Europe. And it also, by some estimate, expected to bring 3.2 billion US dollars annually to Gazprom, that is Russian budget, right? So read it as such. Don't forget that connection that I alluded to between Gazprom and Russian government is definitely there. It first conversation about this particular project was done in 2012, and remember that date as well, right? This was prior to a lot of shenanigans that were down in Europe, primarily the annexation of Crimea in 2014 and the start of the war in Eastern Ukraine. The agreement was signed, however, in 2017, hence that little hesitation there, right? Between 12 and 17. There was a bit of a hesitation there to do so. And start of work started in 2018. And the projected finish of that pipeline is actually this year. As a matter of fact, according to the recent updates that I have checked, there is about 48 kilometers of pipeline left. 48 kilometers, folks, is about 30 miles. So it's, when they say it's almost completed, it is nearly completed. For further information on this particular pipeline, as you will see, I have two links for you. Feel free to go and explore them. One of them is Gazprom, of course, which is very proudly displays this particular achievement as they're sort of building a secure connection into Europe, and of course Nord Stream 2 itself. Now, to be fair, of course, as I said, lion's share of Nord Stream 2 belongs to Gazprom, but it's a consortium, right? So it also has about 5 European gas companies that also pitch into that project. So this is sort of it in a nutshell. So what's the benefit of this? And again, in terms of what Gazprom and the partners are telling us are the good things about the benefits of this particular route. So first of all, it's shorter route, right? So it basically says that existing pipeline right now, the so-called Friendship of Peoples route that runs through the Central Europe, that actually also dates back to the Soviet days, that goes through Ukraine, Poland, and a little bit of Belarus. This particular pipeline, Nord Stream 2, will be much shorter. So it basically cuts out 2,100 kilometers out of the way. Now, what does that mean? It means it's faster, right? It's a direct route into Europe without bypassing the transit countries, which there's certain benefit to that, as both Gazprom and the German government also have pointed out, right? It gives them a direct route directly right into, so you don't have to deal with extra costs of transitional countries, right? And also they claim that the slower, or rather shorter route means lower emissions, right? And this is being sold as the big point here. According to Gazprom, however, and this is also an important point, folks, especially on American side, Europeans have more and more in the recent years been attempting to sort of walk a fine line on their dependency on gas. And they've been buying more and more American liquid natural gas. That's what LNG stands for, liquefied natural gas. And that liquefied natural gas, folks, comes from the United States. So basically, right, to transport LNG, it's a heck of a lot more difficult process, right? It's cheaper to pump gas through the pipelines than it is to actually liquefy it and then ship it in that form. So obviously there's externalities that come with production of LNG, and Gazprom claims that their pipeline, all in all, Nord Stream 2, will cut emissions by 61% of their estimation. And I'm stressing this again, that this is Gazprom's estimate of what it actually is. They also claim, both on the side of the German government right now and the proponents of this in Germany, and as well as Gazprom, that pipeline with this increased 55 million cubic meters a year will be meeting growing demands of European markets, right? Because there's a projection that the supplies of domestic supplies of gas in Europe are dwindling, but their demand is not subsiding. Furthermore, there is a projection that also Gazprom gives that growing global demand around the world is expected to go up by about 25% in the next few years, and therefore Europe needs to secure that direct supply from Russia without relying on other sources. Furthermore, according to Gazprom, and according again to the proponents of this project as well, who are telling us this is purely economic reasons for this, are the lower prices. Gazprom, for instance, projects that this is going to be a reduction from 13 to 32% of gas price per gas for European consumers. To put it basically in very tangible terms for you guys, think about it as, let's say we were paying, or Europeans were paying €4 a cubic meter of gas, now they will be paying 3, right? So it's a sizable thing. And of course, this is a secure direct delivery that will bypass Eastern Europe. And Russia has had, and Europe itself has had already some how shall I say, interruptions in supply that connected to especially Russia-Ukraine relations. And that strikes Europeans, especially Germans, as a good idea, right? To bypass or at least, have a direct line that will secure them some of their supply. But therein also lie some problems and some concerns, which I'm going to dig into next. But let's talk now about some of these concerns in a little more detail. So there are, of course, environmental concerns, and these have been at the forefront. And again, both Gazprom and German government attempt to deal with this, but generally the criticism here is the Baltic ecosystem, right? Because building another pipeline, creating another infrastructure, opening up the waterways to another pipeline can be potentially dangerous. If you don't believe me, remember last week when the ocean was on fire, right? In the Gulf of Mexico. So all jokes aside, right? It's a serious concern for the ecosystems. And Baltic states, of course, are, for instance, in Baltic states and Nordic states, rely on Baltic Sea heavily also for their economics, right? For their fisheries, et cetera, et cetera. So Europeans treat this as a serious concern for them. At the same time, there's been a move on part of EU as a whole toward the more decarbonized economy. So EU has been talking for years now about this Green Deal, EU Green Deal, of trying to move away from fossil fuels into something else. And here's the interesting thing. So Germany itself claims that, the German government under Angela Merkel itself claims that part of their reliance and benefit of Nord Stream 2 would be that the goal for Germans is to cut out their dependency on coal. And coal being, of course, very dirty to burn and also emitting a heck of a lot more CO2 into atmosphere. They believe that relying on gas, switching to gas more, is a better thing. Now, why is it the choice between the two? Of course, there's renewables, but there's also, right, the question about, some people have raised question about the nukes, and I'm just gonna, the nuclear aspect of the energy, and I'm just gonna preempt it by saying that since Fukushima Daiichi explosion in 2012, right, Germans have moved pretty much away from nuclear energy altogether, which is very different from their neighbor France, for instance, that relies very heavily on nuclear energy. So Germany is still sort of in this limbo, saying that we are still committed to reducing CO2 emissions, but we're gonna switch from dirty fossils to less dirty fossil, right? One that comes from Russia, nonetheless. So this is on EU level, right? A lot of Greens, and those of you who follow European politics and German politics for that matter, know that Greens have a heck of a lot of sway in Europe. And in Germany, for instance, right now too, the elections are coming up in September, which is very important to mention. And the Green Party has been doing quite well in the polls. They have been sort of losing in the last couple of, their polls have been kind of dwindling in the last couple of weeks, but nonetheless, it looks like if things go as the way they are, they're probably going to be in a ruling coalition. They're going to be a junior partner So their opinion matters in this sense. And also there's been concerns, again, brought up by the economic and environmental think tanks, suggesting that the estimate for how much gas is actually needed for Europe is way overestimated, right? It's way overestimated. It's not needed, and so on. And as a matter of fact, one of the EU officials basically came out and said that we don't need it. Really, Europe as a whole doesn't need it. Germany probably does, and it's Germany's thing, Germany's choice, but Europe as a whole doesn't need it, really. Then there's a concern about the safety and compliance with EU regulations. EU, Germany is part of the European Union. All the countries, not all, but most of the countries that are in the Baltic states and in the Baltic Sea area are also members of the European Union. So European regulations there apply. And then there's certain concerns about this. So not to be too technical and go into too technical of detail, but even though the pipeline is nearly in the completion, there are some concerns about insurance on the pipeline, as well as certification of the pipeline. And the company that was Norwegian-based, I believe, company that was actually guaranteeing the certification process has withdrawn from that process. So that is an open question sort of on the certification of that pipeline, how it's going to go. And of course, the compliance of EU regulations will continue. EU generally is a stickler for the detail, stickler for its regulation. So that remains to be seen sort of how it's going to be. On insurance side, the insurance for the gas for this pipeline is guaranteed by a Russian company that was created just for that purpose. So it has no previous experience. There's no previous track record of this company, but it's there on paper. But aside of these concerns, sort of safety, compliance, and environment, there are the security and political concerns that are looming, right? Which is the question that we have for us. Is this really an economic thing, or is there something more to this thing? And of course, the biggest question on everybody's mind, increased or sole reliance on Russia as supplier. Why is that a problem? Well, because monopolies in generally, right, are threatening to competition. Monopolies in general are threatening to economic stability, but also the problem here is that Russia is, Gazprom is not just an economic company, right, not a private company, but a state-owned company that can be used for political reasons. And there have been times when gas has been used by Russia as a weapon. And I'll tell you about it in a second. Also then, empowering Russia, given this unprecedented access to European markets with, of course, remember that revenue I told you about, that's a sizable chunk, that 3.2 billion a year. That's going to go into the coffers of the Russian Federation that they're going to use for ? Right? Support and bail out Belarus, support and bail out Venezuela, support and bail out Myanmar, you name it, right? Where's that going to go? Also then, there is a question about this destabilization of European and transatlantic unity, to which we also alluded in the opening of this program, suggesting that, right, not all countries in Europe agree or have a similar position on the pipeline. Germany, it is a German project. It is the project of Angela Merkel's government. She, remember, as a reminder for those of you who maybe don't know, that she's a lame duck now, a lame duck chancellor. She's going out. This is her last few months in office. So after the September election, there will be a new chancellor. And remember, Angela Merkel been in office for almost 2 decades, decade and a half. So this is a big part of her legacy, as it were. But nonetheless, other European allies are not so keen on this particular idea. So like I said, the Baltic states, Eastern European states, Poland has been very vocal. Sweden has expressed some concerns about this. And what does this mean then for European Union and for NATO, right? Remember also United States has for some time opposed this project up until very recently in May when the sanctions were lifted. So that kind of dialogue or disagreement creates a certain degree of friction within the European states. And that raises concerns from perspective of transatlantic security and unity. Again, sort of how far and how stable NATO is going to be, for instance, or European Union is going to be amidst everything. Not any less tangible of a concern is possible military or intelligent use of pipelines and infrastructure. So infrastructure itself, and you might sort of scratch your heads and say, well, how it can be weaponized? Well, it's infrastructure. There's physically a pipeline running through the Baltic Sea. So what does it mean? That for maintenance, that pipeline belongs to Gazprom, to Russia. So for maintenance, it means that Russian are going to have increased presence in the Baltic Sea to maintain that thing, which means that they can also use that presence for monitoring the activities of NATO allies in the Baltic Sea. And Baltic Sea is the home to sizable navy of NATO as well, right? Furthermore, there's been, and I tried to find this report for you, and unfortunately I couldn't. There was a report recently produced by some Ukrainian scholars who attempted to sort of link and show how the actual pipeline can be itself sort of used with bugs and stuff like that, right? To put it in layman's term, for espionage, just like Russia, for instance, now has used some infrastructure in the Black Sea, right? After the Crimea has been annexed. So take it with a grain of salt as you wish. Like I said, I tried to find that report, but unfortunately I couldn't locate it, but I know of its existence because I've seen it referenced several times now. But again, there it is. Take it for what it is. It's a possibility. That concern actually was raised by Sweden as well at some point of time, that the espionage might be there, and Baltic states as well. And of course, that big concern of sovereignty and security of Ukraine, which I think deserves just a little more dissecting so we can understand what's so big deal for Ukraine, specifically for Eastern Europe. What's the concern there? So is it an economic project then, or a weapon? So here I provided you a map with the Nord Stream 1 and 2, right? Comparatively to the other pipelines that are already in existence. So you see that Brotherhood, Friendship of People pipeline that runs through Ukraine onto Poland, right? And then onto the rest of Europe. And another one that runs from Belarus, Russia, Poland, and so on, onto Europe. So also, to point out, there's other couple of pipelines that go through, that's at the Turk Stream pipeline, and another one, the Trans-Adriatic pipeline, all of which also go around the transit states, also belonging to, you guessed it, Gazprom, and also a relatively new project. Which means what? That pipeline, that Central European pipeline, can very well become obsolete. So on one hand, the direct supply can be a positive for Germany and positive for Europe. Sure, it avoids these problem areas. Why problem areas? Because in their dispute between Russia and Ukraine, there were 2 instances in history already when the Gazprom decided to shut off supply of gas to Ukraine. And then by extension, of course, the supply stopped to the rest of Europe. And that happened in 2006 and 2009. And if anyone knows anything about Ukrainian sort of history and the relations with Russia, they will know that 2006 dispute was following shortly after the first sort of Orange Revolution that was pro-Western and rejected pro-Russian leader that was elected. And then over some other disputes when Ukraine really was pushing for in 2008, by the way, when that was, this was following the decision and promise of NATO to admit Ukraine in 2008, when the first promise in Bucharest was made. And in 2009, ta-da, gas is cut off. So to use the words of famous Russian propagandist, coincidence? I don't think so. So there you have it. So given that, on one hand, yes, bypassing Ukraine, yes, your Western Europeans can sort of cut themselves off of these shenanigans and these unfortunate interruptions. But at the same time, now they are themselves opening to that very pressure, right? Because in those years, in 2006 and 2009, when the gas stopped flowing to Ukraine, because Ukraine still has its own gas and enough supplies stored in the underground facilities, the estuaries, right? It was able to continue, yes, limited, but continue supply of gas onto Europe. So European capitals and European citizens did not experience the full horror of having your gas shut off in 2006 and 2009. Now they open themselves up for that possibility, right? Because now there's nothing to prevent them. There's no transition buffer states to do that. So it's a trade-off one way or the other. Furthermore, as transition states, just because the transit makes money too for these economies, because it goes with, like I said, filling the gas reservoirs and also maintenance of the pipelines and so on. So this means that this transition also makes revenue for Ukrainians, for instance. So 3 billion in annual fees, give or take 2 or 3 by some estimates, a year Ukraine makes on this particular deal. If the gas stops flowing, not only does, mind you, Ukraine does not buy gas from Russia anymore. Since annexation of Crimea, they now buy it from Europe. Now, if any of you interested how that works, I'm more than happy to tell you about how that scheme works. It's called reverse system. It's interesting in its own right, but nonetheless, as a transit state, Ukraine still makes some money. If the gas were to stop flowing, on one hand, yes, Ukraine would lose a certain degree of security of its own gas supply. It will increase costs for Ukraine to buy gas now, even in this clever little system that they have now, even though they don't buy it from Russians right now. But it will also mean the loss of revenue. Now, for Ukraine, this is a big loss. President Zelensky himself said a couple months ago that this money, was used not only for stabilizing Ukrainian economics, but also to fund Ukraine's army, which it needs very much because there is a war in Donbass that is basically seeded and proxied by Russia. And to defend Ukraine itself, Ukraine needs that kind of cash. But it's a existential crisis as well. So it's not just economic threat, but existential threat. Ukraine finds this the possibility of gas stopping to flow in many ways very cumbersome. And another thing that I didn't mention on economics, is that even if the gas stops flowing, the pipeline still needs maintaining. So it's not just that the revenue is lost, but also extra money is going to be spent without the revenue made up to maintain the bloody thing. So it's definitely an economic hardship. But in terms of existential threat, and this is probably one of these things where really we're dealing with this, whether or not it's a weapon. Remember, Crimea is already occupied. And by all accounts, Crimea has turned into a military base from beautiful place that it used to be. It now hosts more military personnel and barbed wire beaches than you care to imagine. So on that front, Ukraine's already sort of surrounded. Eastern regions are de facto occupied by Russian forces that continue to support and wage war in that particular region. Ukraine, of course, has a big border with Russia, despite the fact that supposedly Russian troops were withdrawn from the borders, but you might recall in April when Russians were building up their military presence around Ukraine, the intelligence says that the guys left, but the machinery is left behind, So the troops marched away, but the machinery is left behind, which tells us what? That they are coming back. It's not that hard to pull together the manpower than it is the machinery. The machinery is ready. And also, very recently, and probably also not coincidentally, on Monday, Vladimir Putin has published an article that was published on Kremlin's website, where he once again, and very poignantly and very openly, denies existence of Ukraine as a real country, He's been saying that for years, but now he published a full-on treatise, which he also published in Ukrainian, mind you. So you can guess who that was addressed to. It's a warning to Ukrainians too, That get ready. Ukraine is not a real country, and it really is part of Russia. And the only way that Ukraine can be successful is with Russia. So Ukrainians are really concerned. August will be 30th anniversary since collapse of USSR. Ukraine is getting ready to celebrate its 30th birthday. and there's concerns whether or not that's might not be the last. I hope so. I hope not. I hope it's not the last. I hope there's many, many more, but nonetheless, there is a concern about that. And given that that essay from Putin comes in such a poignant time as the Nord Stream 2 is being discussed. So that's what's at stake. And of course, you might say, so, okay, so even if Ukraine gets subsumed, what's up with that? Well, remember that Ukraine is not part of NATO, right? And nor do I foresee it becoming part of NATO anytime soon. But Poland is, Romania is, Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia are. And they understand very well that should Belarus and Ukraine become part of and fall under control of Russia, they're not that far behind. Not to mention, and I'm saying it with full responsibility of my words here, right? Historically, from historical perspective, when Russians and Germans get friendly with each other, Poles, Latvians, and Lithuanians and Estonians get worried, with reason. So there is a concern here that this is not simply an economic project, but really a much longer game plan to make Eastern Europe more compliant, especially Ukraine more compliant to demands of the Russian Federation. So sanctions, very quickly, what's there on that front? So I told you already that EU Commission, European Union itself, does not really support Nord Stream 2, right? They said it numerous times, but they also said that they have no plans really of stopping it if the project is in compliance with regulations. And this came directly from the Director General of the Energy Directorate General, that is the ministry equivalent at the European Union level. So their Minister of Economics basically says, as long as they comply, we're not crazy about this, but we're not gonna, we can't really stop it. Now, to be fully honest with you, right, EU and Gazprom have a difficult relationship because there's been already an instance when Commission sued Gazprom on the prompting from Eastern European countries who accused Gazprom of monopoly. And here we are, right? More sort of monopolistic behavior. And this is basically the realm of Commission. So that is to be seen sort of how that's gonna unfold in the future. In January, following the arrest of arrest of Navalny, who returned from Germany, right? He's the opposition leader in Russia. When he returned to Russia, he was arrested. European Parliament voted to hold the construction, right? And European Parliament has been also vocal in the sense that they would like to oppose this. Not the least, there's a big sort of green party presence in European Parliament. So they have their own reasons for that too. But US sanctions is a more interesting thing here, for us at least. So sanctions in the US were put in place on construction, right? So these were against the actual entities that were constructing participating in construction of Nord Stream. They went in 2019 in December, then they were strengthened again with the National Defense Act in 2020. And then again in early 2021, there was an attempt to strengthen them, but with the Biden administration coming to office, there started to be a conversation about lifting and softening the sanctions, and they were finally lifted in May of 2021, which brings us now to where we are, right? That it seems that the pipeline is going through, and what then is there to do? What is there to, how we ameliorate this moving forward? There have been attempts in US legislature, for instance, right, to sort of counterbalance this a little bit. And there are US legislators who are not happy with this particular decision. But I can address that a little bit in the Q&A, and I have a slide to show you if you're interested here. Kiev Post, for instance, has last week pulled together a list of defenders of Ukraine in DC, right, Ukrainian friends in the capital. So you see there's a bipartisan support for Ukraine on that front, right? Those folks who are actually suggesting that there might be something more to this conversation than simply restoring good relations between Germany and United States. This is more than just a project of economy or economic project. So something might need to be done in this direction. And of course, there's been some quotes and some actions. So for instance, in addition to those folks, Senator Jim Rich, for instance, was talking about how lifting the sanctions was a gift to Putin by Biden administration ahead of that summit that we discussed last month. Another senator from North Dakota, right, Kevin Kramer, was suggesting that US really is hampering itself, remember, on that liquefied natural gas supply to Europe by allowing this pipeline to go through. Ted Cruz actually attempted to make a bipartisan deal with Jean Shaheen to introduce the bill to address that. And they were joined by some other folks in that direction. And of course, the Marcy Kaptur of Ohio attempted to amend the already existing sanctions as well. Right, so there's been some efforts, but again, none of this has gone through, and how much Congress can actually push forward, we yet don't know. So I think a lot of this will come as a resolution of tomorrow's summit to see where sort of Merkel and Biden, what they agree to. So moving forward, this is the picture from Monday's summit of Zelensky and Merkel. I thought it was very telling in the very body language, because it seems to me that from everything we've heard from what came out of that meeting was that Merkel basically put Ukrainian government on notice that as far as they're concerned, the project will go forward, the project will be finished, the pipeline will be operational. However, Germany continues to, in words of Angela Merkel, to reiterate its support for Ukraine's territorial integrity, and it will attempt to create some kind of guarantees and compensations. One of the things that Merkel's supporters have been praising her for is that she prompted, or rather afforded, a negotiation of the deal between Gazprom and Ukraine, where Gazprom guarantees that it will not stop transit through Ukraine until 2024. That's another 3 years. What comes after 2024? I don't know, right? There's no deal. Also, a problem there is that as of right now, there's been some threatening language out of Russia besides that statement from Putin. In June at the economic summit in St. Petersburg, he said something along those lines that they are open to negotiation with Ukraine on transit, but Ukraine has to show some goodwill on ending war in Donbass, which means ending war in Donbass on Russian terms, right? So basically painting Ukraine into a corner, and that's not something Ukrainian government yet prepared to do. And so what kind of guarantees and compensations can there be? Open question. So perhaps tomorrow we'll know more. And of course, then US-German relations, right? Whether or not this is a too high a price, or is it really going to be an ameliorating factor? So on that happy note, I will stop and go to questions.
Dr. Lena Sortsko-Harnett, that was a lot of ground to cover in a quick amount of time. So we appreciate that, and certainly a lot that we could unpack and try to get to. So we appreciate your presentation. Friendly reminder for those watching live on the JES Facebook page, we are taking questions from you, the audience. So if you have questions, just leave them in the comments section below. Watching or listening to a later broadcast, still, we'll take those questions, those comments to keep this conversation going. So looking at the timeline here, I want to go back to 4 key years that you introduced us to early. 2012, the inception of the idea. There's an agreement in 2017. Construction starts in 2018. Here we are in 2021, and we're sitting here in July, and you're saying we're almost there. This is the proverbial last mile or kilometer of the pipeline to be finished. What is the realistic expectation that A, it's going to get done, but then B, the gas will actually flow through in 2021? Are we going to see gas flowing through in 2021? Do you suspect?
So this is the key question. Absolutely. So the expectation that it will be finished, I think, is there. The construction is going on. The construction is moving forward. And like I said, it's less than 30 miles left. There's some construction that goes on the coast of Denmark, and a little bit that comes off to coast of Germany. So the physical infrastructure, I suspect, will be done in time by the end of this year. In terms of whether or not the gas will actually flow, I think this is where we're going to have to really see a couple of things unfolding. On one hand, whether or not that pipeline is really going to live up to the regulatory norms and in terms of its certification process, right? Whether or not Gazprom is actually going to receive from all the European countries that are affected by this pipeline, as well as the EU, the green light to go ahead, which according to some experts is a big if. Also a big if, of course, is still the election in Germany in September. If indeed the Green Party comes to have some kind of prominence in the cabinet and they hold some kind of sway, they have been very vocal about being against this pipeline, we might expect some kind of consideration and pulling back on this. Also, of course, given tomorrow's conversation, going back to US, German, Ukraine triangle, or quadrangle of US, Germany, Russia, Ukraine, whether or not there's going to be a sizable package of real guarantees and compensations for Ukraine offered on this deal. And here's why it's important. President Biden invited President Zelensky to visit Washington sometime this month, right? So we're already in the 14th today, tomorrow's the 15th. We have like half a month left. That invitation is extended and preparations are ongoing. However, there's no set date. Question mark, why not set date? My answer, tomorrow's meeting. Whatever happens out of tomorrow's meeting, right? Angela Merkel is coming to Joseph Biden to tell, listen, I spoke to Ukrainians, I put them on notice, I promised them some kind of carrots that comes with this big stick. We got to figure out what those carrots might be. So then when Ukrainian president does come to Washington and you do meet with him, we can be a unified front and say, this is how it's gonna be. And moreover, President Biden, you can go ahead and tell your congressional coalition, bipartisan coalition, that we got this all covered and everything's gonna go hunky-dory and smoothly so they don't have to rock the boat, right? So a lot of moving parts still in place. So long answer to your very short question, physically, it will be finished. When the gas will flow, huge question mark.
And I want to come back to the bipartisan faction in a second, but what I don't want to understate too is looking at the inception of this project back to that timeline, 2012 inception, 2017 agreement, 2018 construction, and now looking to be finished in 2021. In between there, also on the timeline of 2021, is lifting of the sanctions. And so this project has spanned now 3 US presidential administrations. It starts in inception with the Obama administration, goes through the Trump administration, and now to the Biden administration. Why does this make sense for the Biden administration to lift these sanctions? Before we get to talking about the bipartisan group, why does it make sense from the Biden perspective? And perhaps maybe we're going to get a lot more of that tomorrow with the meeting and the discussion with Angela Merkel and Germany's involvement. But why would this make sense to lift the sanctions that have been put in place for years?
So this is a fantastic conversation, right? Because again, even the observers of US politics are torn about this. On one hand, some suggesting this is a huge mistake, like that quote I gave you from a Republican senator, right? That this might have been or is a gift to Russia. From what we're hearing from official White House, right, is that this is their attempt to actually give a gift to Germany, right? Because Germany has become a very prominent voice in European politics. Let's also not forget the context of European politics that we're dealing with here. We're dealing with post-Brexit Europe. And that's an important point to recall. In post-Brexit Europe, since UK as a leading voice in European Union, Germany and France have assumed what has been sort of their historical position of leaders in European politics. And Germany more and more has been very assertive in that direction. So given that particular prominence, the dispute between the two allies, who are also members of NATO, both of them, and Germany is a prominent member of NATO as well, is an important factor. So this absolutely makes sense, that for in the sense that yes, to appease, ameliorate, give some kind of concession, big concession to Germany, lifting of the sanctions are a thing.
How different would this be before we get to the bipartisan faction? And I'm going to sneak in an audience question actually before the bipartisan faction to talk about that. How different of a conversation would this be if we're not in a post-Brexit European Union? If the United Kingdom's still at the table, how might that be changing the conversation today?
I think it would be just a change of power dynamics a little bit more, right? And even on the timeline that you have already pointed out, right? The construction that all goes, plan goes ahead after Brexit. Brexit
Right.
happens in 2016, right? So UK has not been a big a fan of this idea, right? And probably would not have been big a fan of this idea. And because it could throw its weight around, and actually UK was also a big proponent and continues to be a big proponent of Ukraine. But when it was still in the European Union, it could still pull its weight, right? Regardless. It was a sizable country and a notable economy. Now, with it's gone, there's this voice is absent.
So it's clearly the power dynamic and the balance changing. I want to go to an audience question. I'll start with the comment first. Lena, thank you for this talk. Very informative. So glad you've given it. The question is, would you agree that the beginning of the Nord Stream can be found with former Chancellor Schroeder in 2005 when he signed a deal with Putin? Since 2017, he is still on the board, this person points out, still on the board. How does this all fit with the overall exit of fossil fuel energy strategy? So I think a lot to unpack there, but how does this predate Angela Merkel as chancellor? And then how is this fitting into the strategy of exiting fossil fuels? And I know you touched on that earlier of a less dirty fossil fuel. I like the way that you framed that. If it's still dirty-ish, but it's not the cleanest, we're getting there. But talk about pre-Angela Merkel in this. Does this have root there?
That is a fantastic question. And that question is actually way broader than just predating Angela Merkel. This is a question about something, because your listener is absolutely correct about Schroeder and him serving and being on the board. There is a very interesting trend among former European politicians who are now being offered positions in Russian companies. So the last one was Francois Fillon, the former Prime Minister of France, who has been offered a position. Some critics of Angela Merkel have suggested, wonder if she's looking for a cushy retirement following these very ideas. Again, this is a pure speculation.
Well,
But
and I was gonna ask you that of where is Angela Merkel post election in the fall? Does she still have involvement in this? What's the future for her? But that's maybe a discussion for another day. But I think that's a point not to undersell here.
Correct. And like I said, the critics have looked at this and said, look, Schroeder, Fillon, there is a list of folks that is very sizable. So perhaps there is something here about sort of these personal interests, not just national interests. So that question is fantastic. Of course, yeah, it did start a little earlier, way earlier. Russia has never, come on, since we know, since Putin took office, he saw very clearly and acted very strategically in consolidation of state power over gas and oil supplies of Russian Federation. That is done specifically for the fact that he understands how well fossil fuels can be used as geopolitical tools of pressure, manipulation, etc., etc.
Well, in that, is his toolkit going to become outdated? If he's still relying on fossil fuels as the weapon, how much longer might that still be a reality that he can play that as more and more countries now look to renewable, cleaner energy?
And this is why this conversation is so poignant, because if European Union that has been trumpeting its new Green Deal for years and sort of being the forefront and forerunner of this green energy and so on, where are we now? Where are we going to go if we still sort of getting ourselves bogged down and tied more closely to Russian fossil fuels, which suggests that maybe it's not going anywhere. Maybe it's actually here to stay.
So Interesting point. And sticking with Putin, but on a different topic, back to Ukraine, with his recent statement, published both Russian and Ukrainian, in looking at the maneuvering around Ukraine when it comes to now liquid natural gas flowing not through or around, but not dealing with it. With this statement, and then with the picture we're still looking at on screen between Zelensky and Merkel, is this in a way delegitimizing Ukraine's position as a sovereign nation, as its own country, with Putin issuing this statement, and then the European Union saying, well, we don't like this, but we're not going to stop it and get in the way, and other European leaders championing this and looking to put Ukraine in its place? Is this delegitimizing the actual existence of Ukraine?
So you're hitting the nail on the head here. One of the big concerns that's coming out of Ukrainian politicians and political elite, and I hear this so often I can't even tell you, is a concern that I actually voiced also several times about subjectivity versus agency of Ukraine in the political processes. Is for longest time, and Ukraine feels that way acutely, especially right now, that the conversation about Ukraine are about Ukraine. So there's a wonderful statement, wonderful sort of proverb of diplomats, right? If you are not at the table, you're being served. Ukraine is being served. It's not at the table, right? And this is how it actually feels. And I think it's part of sort of this serious frustration on part of Ukrainian government, in the sense that, yes, on one hand, Germany and United States are talking about support for Ukrainian sovereignty. They seem to understand and they seem to claim that there's the devotion there. The feeling of Ukrainian government and Ukrainian officials is that they are the ones that are lunch rather than are being part of the conversation.
And so let's go to the best friends on Capitol Hill, and
Sure.
let's take a look at that, because that is such an interesting list of folks comprising that. And then you had that wonderful next slide where it had some quotes, including one from Senator Ted Cruz looking at this. And so this looks like an unlikely match of bipartisan agreement against this, because we find ourselves in such partisan times here in the States. When we read the headlines or we turn on mainstream media news, and we find that, left cannot agree with right, and right cannot agree with left, and liberal cannot agree with conservative, conservative cannot agree with liberal. But yet here we see a bipartisan faction disagreeing with that. Talk a little bit more about how this cadre of individuals has come together and rallied around this, and how much noise does this stand to make in the overall conversation?
So it's always been sort of the policy of Ukraine. Ukraine, since its inception, has been lucky enough to enjoy bipartisan support. I think this is, again, relic perhaps of the Cold War, and why these individual lawmakers support Ukraine. They all have very different reasons to do so, right? Obviously, there is a criticism on the Republican side of the soft Biden administration that sort of sold out to Russia. Then there is, of course, a faction on the among the probably both Republicans and Democrats who see Ukrainian struggle against Russia in the more broad terms, right, as this epic struggle between liberal democracy and authoritarianism, right, to try to draw parallels between Ukraine attempting to sort of remove the yoke of this neo-imperialism that Russia is attempting to impose upon it, and create a democratic, sustainable society, despite all the problems that Ukraine is having. So over the years, Ukraine has really sort of struggled and worked really, really hard on trying to find bipartisan support in United States. And like I said, this comes from a number of reasons. One of them, of course, that there is a big presence of Ukrainian diaspora in United States and in Canada as well, right? And in the United States, the Ukrainian Congress has a powerful voice that is heard, in the sense of sort of voicing concerns about Ukrainian independence and sovereignty.
So I'm going to ask two final questions, Lena, before we're almost out of time here. The last one I'm going to ask is I'm going to ask what it is that we should be looking for from your perspective for tomorrow's meetings. Maybe one, two, three things to take away we should be looking at. But when we, as the more casual viewers, look at this meeting between President Joe Biden and Chancellor Angela Merkel, what should we be looking for? That'll be my final question. But before that, I'm going to sneak it in and say, why should average Americans care about this? And so what does this mean to Americans? And I don't mean to be the ugly American in the conversation and say, why does it matter to me? Why should I care about this? But I think when it comes to foreign policy, we tend to look at it, what does this mean to us in relationship to where we are and how we see the world? And we are here and we see the world through the United States. So for the average American, why should we care about this? Why does this mean something to us?
Great question. So one of the sort of big elephants in the room, why we far away from that part of the world should be concerned. One thing, of course, is I'm going to stress this economic relationship between Europe and United States, that yes, in its collaboration with Europe, United States has been one of the major suppliers of that liquefied natural gas to Europe. And that pipeline sort of threatens that supply. So if we want to think about it in purely economic terms, if we want to think about it in purely sort of what's in it for me in my pocket, there it is. Also, not least important is NATO in its presence, right? This geopolitical conversation, this movements of Russia, posing threat of Russia to NATO also means, remember, now NATO has Article 5, which means attack on one is attack on all, which means that if something happens in Europe, if something goes boom in the night, and if Poland or Lithuania or Estonia or Germany become threatened by Russia, United States will have to intervene. And that, after 20 years in Afghanistan, we should know how much that cost us. So these are interconnected and related issues. So, everything is political, and gas and fossil fuels are very much tied to money and tied to politics.
So final question, from your observation, your expertise, your insight and knowledge for us watching tomorrow's meeting between President Joe Biden and Chancellor Angela Merkel, what is it we should be on the lookout for? One thing, two things, three things. Briefly, what are we paying attention to tomorrow, July 15th, when we see the meeting between President Biden and Chancellor Merkel?
I expect lots of smiles, lots of congratulations, lots of warm greetings. But behind the closed doors, it will be a heated conversation. Expect to hear something about Nord Stream. I'm expecting to hear some kind of amelioratory language toward agreement that they're going to reach. I'm expecting to hear something about strengthening relationship and maybe some work on NATO. There might be some more conversation about the Middle East. But yeah, those are my primary expectations for tomorrow's meeting.
Dr. Lena Sartzko-Harned, we now have our homework for the meeting tomorrow between President Biden and Angela Merkel on Thursday, July 15th. And we have a whole new wealth of knowledge about Nord Stream 2, the politics of pipeline. Thank you for sharing your insights, your knowledge, your expertise with us here in JES Digital Programming.
Thank you very much for having me, as always. My pleasure.
And of course, big thanks to all of you watching along at home, whether you're tuning in live to watch this or streaming this later on demand. Thank you for tuning in. These programs and discussions and the exchange of information and ideas would not be possible without you. Folks, of course, for more information about JES, please visit jeserie.org. There you're going to find videos of past presentations available to stream on demand and publications, including reports, essays, and timely writings, as well as information about other JES initiatives, such as our Civic Leadership Academy and Ramey Fellow program. And be sure to like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter and Instagram, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. For the Jefferson Educational Society, I'm Ben Spegan. Be safe, be sound, and thanks for listening and learning with us.